OTBSports.com.
The Football Show on Off the Ball.
With Sky. Watch Premier League, Women's Super League, EFL, Scottish Premiership and much more. Live on Sky Sports.
I'm prepared to do anything I can to play for my country again.
Do it then.
What about your start to the game?
It wasn't bad, was it?
Why should an honest answer be a mistake?
How can a modern day manager not have a mobile phone?
Why should he?
Welcome along, Football Show. So full time at Stadium 974, Brazil 4-1 winners against South Korea. It was the first half, really. That was the show. Vinicius Jr. on 7 minutes. Cue much dancing. Neymar with a penalty on 13 minutes. Cue more dancing. Richarlison 29 minutes, more dancing, involving the coach this time. And 36 minutes, Paqueta with a strike from outside the area. Cue more dancing. Roy Keane, I can't believe what I'm watching. I've never seen so much dancing. So we're going to talk to Tim Vickery later on. Pat Nevin is with us in the meantime. Hello.
Good evening, Joe. How are you doing?
Yeah, very well. Is the dancing disrespectful? Roy Keane thinks it might be. Or is this Brazil enjoying themselves, bit of samba, reclaiming their DNA?
Go on. If it was anyone else, I would say it feels a wee bit disrespectful, but it's Brazilians. And that's what they do. It must be painful if you're a player playing against it. But in the end, they were totally brilliant. And if you're South Koreans, if you're North Koreans, you're not worried. If you're South Koreans, you're sitting thinking to yourself, I just want to get out of this. I don't want to be embarrassed. At 4-0, it could go anywhere at that point in time. I think the Brazilians were really helped by the fact that they get that early goal. And when the second one goes in, they know they're not going to lose, so they can just go and have fun. They can just relax. Every pass becomes so much easier. But they're taking nothing away from them. It was brilliant to see. And there was a commentary on over here in Qatar, and they said, if you're a youngster coming through now and you look at this and this is your first World Cup, you remember that first half because it looked so fabulous. And the flicks were brilliant, the goals were brilliant, the movement was fantastic, and it just looked rather fabulous. And the hope and expectation is to just keep on going. I mean, they've got Croatia now in the next round. That won't be as easy, I suspect. But if they've got that confidence and that belief in that kind of samba style, they're going to be a beautiful thing to watch.
Yes, I would think so. Tim Vickery is going to join us later on this hour. The weekend upcoming is taking shape. So on Friday, we will see Croatia against Brazil. They both came through today. Croatia on penalties against Japan. And also on Friday, we will have Netherlands against Argentina. And of course, on Saturday, France against England certainly catches the eye. What have you been at over the last couple of days? Where have you been?
Well, first of all, I was at the Argentina game. They played against Australia. That was really quite interesting because just watching Messi now, being in the stadium, watching everything off the ball, it's quite incredible. Your first thought is, why are you just walking about? Why don't you just walk? You don't do anything, you just walk. And then decide when it's time to have a right good dig. I'm hoping you can still hear me because it's got a poor connection here. But the guy manages the game like no one you've ever seen. He waited and waited. He scored this goal, obviously, and turned it on when he had to. Then waited and waited and waited until the space came out. And every game, I'm sure I've said this before, space develops in every single game of football that is ever played. And it always, as the game goes on, that happens. He just walks about and waits for it.
Yeah. And
then in the last 15 minutes, he was just incredible. So that was, good to see. Without him, they've no chance. Absolutely not hope. Without him having these moments of brilliance. So I was very impressed with Australia keeping the fight going. But, normal service has been resumed after all those upsets, as we can see who's going through to these quarters. One of the things that I don't know if it's noticeable coming across on the TV, at the Argentina game, a lot of the games, there's kind of some fans and a lot of plastic fans, right?
Yeah.
Not with Argentina.
Yeah.
Absolutely not with Argentina. The noise was incredible. Long before the start of the game, you felt as if you were at a Boca River Plate game. It was amazing. And then I was on air for an hour after the game, they're still there. They're still singing. They're still having a party. So they've got Messi, but they've also got them fans as well. So that gives them a chance, but only a chance. I still don't think in the width of it all, there's other teams that have got better strength and depth. And in this competition, God knows you're going to need strength and depth because of the amount of games that are played in quick succession.
Yeah, I have to say, they strike me as very unconvincing, and they have all tournament. And the game opened up beautifully for Messi in the last 25 minutes. You couldn't have picked a better game for him. And of course, he's got so much quality. He's going to do great things. And his first goal had a real vintage quality to it. But in the main, I don't think there's much to fear when it comes to this Argentine side. And Australia, there was a great line, I think it was Jonathan Liu had it, he was talking about the Argentinian press, and he said it's not so much a press as a series of polite inquiries. And I think for the first half hour until Messi made that breakthrough, Australia were really starting to feel their way into that game, and we're looking around thinking, there's something here for us. So I don't know. I mean, the Messi of 5-10 years ago, sure, but it just seems like too big an ask now.
It feels like too big an ask. I would agree with you, but that's the only question they've got. It is the only one. There is not enough quality anywhere else in the team. Di Maria will come on and do a bit. He didn't play in that game, but he could do a bit. But there's nowhere near enough creativity. They're a decent-ish team, for a World Cup. But without him, it's not even... I like the centre-backs. The centre-backs did well. Centre midfield, they're good, they're strong, they're stuffy. They could go old-fashioned Argentina and just kick people and try and get draws. They could do that style if Messi wasn't doing it for them. But you're so limited. He gives you so much, but you cannot press when you've got Messi. You're wasting your time. It's pointless. You can't press with very few men, and particularly up front, a man who can't close down. And it's to take nothing away from him. At that age, with the amount of games, that was his 1,000th game, then scores another goal, 700 and odd goals. You can't leave him out because he can still do it. But it's almost going to be a hard watch when they do go out, and I think they will go out because some teams just going to roller coaster over the top of them. They're just going to steamroll them, aren't they? And it's going to look a wee bit sad. And I think it's looked sad a few times for Messi, purely because he's not had enough quality around him. I think it's going to look sad when it happens this time. And somebody might give them a real doing.
Yeah, that's totally my sense. I'm glad you said that because that's totally my sense. But I think there's almost a euphoria that Messi's had some moments in a World Cup and people are maybe overlooking the reality of where Argentina are. It's funny you say that about the press. For whatever reason, we're at a stage in a cycle for quite a few teams, be it Ronaldo, be it Giroud, be it Lewandowski, be it Messi, where a lot of the big teams just can't press because their aging superstar is aging.
Exactly. It's a massive problem for them. They seem to be managing so far to get through, particularly, obviously, France have done well, but they've got so much energy elsewhere. And I suppose to some degree, if you get massive amounts of energy elsewhere, it can compensate for it to some degree. And we'll just see if it's going to be enough for any of those players that you mentioned. But they are all great players. They are all great finishers. But what's been asked of them, Lewandowski was an interesting one. Don't you press, mate, because there's nobody behind you. There's absolutely nobody behind you who's going to help you. There's not enough quality there behind you. So he was caught in a catch-22 anyway, even if he wanted to do that. But yeah, it's a strange time. It definitely looks like a change around World Cup where the next group is going to be led by Mbappe. But, who else is it going to be? Is it going to be Bellingham? Is he actually as good as people think he is? I'm looking forward to that one. I'm very fortunate because I've got... The other games, I was at the Ghana-Uruguay one, by the way. I have to say, the pleasure in that, and I'm not one for retribution. However, I would to watch Suarez's face when he went out, after what had happened. I mean, we talked about it before, but seriously, I had the biggest, cheesiest grin on my face. And I'm not against Uruguay. It was just him and what he'd done to Ghana. And Ghana were out as well, and they're not good. They weren't good enough, obviously. But to watch their fans think, oh, so we've got this to hang on to. Honestly, it was a joyous moment in the stadium. And I'm sure quite a lot of people have done it, and I've kind of spliced the two pictures together of Luis Suarez giggling the last time in the tunnel when he put Ghana out, and this time in tears on the bench. And it's, turns out there is a God. Who'd have known it?
England, an interesting case for so many reasons. So they will play France next Saturday. You mentioned Bellingham. I think we all had that moment as he half pirouetted and half bulldozed his way through midfield to set and chain the opening goal, of thinking, wow, 19, this is more than just a bit special.
Yeah, the amount of people have talked about it because they've seen those moments. You know, we've not seen them all, but they've seen those moments and thought, yeah, that's a bit special. And you think of someone, you know, the likes of what Pogba was, and you look at what he's got and you think, yeah, keep your attitude right, mate, and you can go easily up that direction and beyond. He does look extra special. I've also seen him have quiet games, but you do that when you're young. It happens when you're young. But at the moment, now and again, you just see a player's gait change, his body shape change, his attitude towards the rest of the world change. Watched it with him, and it's there. It's no doubt. I mean, any team in the world now would just take him. I think they would take him in a second. I don't think there's a single team on the planet, if you offered him, they wouldn't take him right now and put him in the first team and playing right away. So he's going to be a very special player, and he could be one of a very few that are quite obvious that are going to be the next massive generation. And happen because, you know, I think he drives a lot of the energy around the rest of the team. They get a lift from him, and you can see the energy that they get. I mean, I'm going to be at the England-France game. So, I mean, that's one. I've got two, actually. I've got 2 quarters. Don't feel sorry for me because I'm getting too tired now with all these games, right? But I'm going to go to the Croatia-Brazil game and the England-France game.
Wow.
And I suspect I'm going to see the winners of this tournament in those 2 games. And I can't wait to see them up close. I think at the moment I'm going to be standing pitch side for the England game, right behind the goal. So I'm going to get the closest. You know, and sometimes when you're that close, you can see the ridiculous pace of somebody like Mbappe, and you think, oh, it does kind of knock your wind out of you sometimes when you see that. So I've got some absolute crackers, and it feels as if, look, I've enjoyed this World Cup. It's been a cracker of a World Cup. I really enjoyed all the upsets and the excitement and the surprises. Even, you know, the likes of Australia have been competitive, and Iran for a wee while, but we're back to normal now. We're back to the usual ones. And if it goes like expected tomorrow, we could actually have, was it Croatia, Brazil, Netherlands, Argentina, England, France, and Portugal, Spain. I mean, some people might actually call that quite boring because it's just the usual suspects, isn't it? But there's enough uncertainty there to make it a special World Cup.
Yeah, I call it pretty tasty. We'll come on to the Mbappe problem for England in just a second, but it is just worth reiterating or getting your thoughts on the extent to which they are devastating going forward when they want to be, because they put together some absolutely sensational football. There is still a sense there's more in Kane. Every time the camera cuts to the bench and you see a couple of 100 million quid's worth of talent kicking their heels waiting to come on, but not sulking either. I think it must be said I think there is a sense in this team that just because you're not starting, it's not an insult, and you will come on and make an impact in those wider positions. You throw all that into the pot and mix it up, and this feels like they've as good a chance of winning a World Cup as at any stage in my lifetime, that's for sure. Maybe back to 1990, I suppose.
I would agree completely. I do look at them because there's that youth, and we're in a time of you need energy and you need pace and you need youth and you need spirit, and you don't need anyone in your team who thinks he's above anyone else. And they've got that. And you've got to some degree applaud Gareth Southgate for doing that. It comes back down to, you know, how are you going to allow them to believe in themselves enough? We talk about those players. And I'll talk about my old mate Matomo in a minute, who missed a penalty tonight, who broke my heart. I didn't even bother watching the penalties that closely because I was so sure Japan were going to get it. But I've watched him grow in this tournament, and I've watched others just mature into it. You can see that with the England team. As a group, they could actually do that. I don't think I've watched them playing before and thought that they believed before. But I look at them now and I think, yep, you believe. You absolutely believe, because you've got, you know, almost every position you've got good talent, good physical prowess, and certainly with Kane's intelligence at the moment, the times that he's dropping, can allow people to go beyond him, and he's not worrying if he's not scoring the goals. Stick all of that together, and as you say, that bench as well, and it does look actually quite frightening.
And that said, there is the Mbappe problem, which is interesting. There's much speculation that certainly Kyle Walker fancies his chances against Mbappe as much as anyone could fancy their chances against Mbappe. But there is much speculation nonetheless that Southgate will look at this France team, will say to himself, this is the best team I've probably come up against at a finals, and we'll go for 3 at the back and we'll go for that extra security. What's your read on what Southgate should and will do?
I think what he will do is I think he'll go for the back 3, and he'll have a right full back and he'll have a right wing back on Walker that's there to cover the pace. And I think he'll change his whole style for that one player. Maybe more than just that one player, but I think just going by what Southgate's done in the past, he will err on the side of caution when the big moment comes. If you lose and you've done it that way, you kick himself forever. Absolutely forever. See if you lose while having a go and saying, right, okay, we'll put a right back up against you. Kyle, you go for him. So you're against him. See if you can stop him. Somebody has to be able to stop him. And then you allow enough of the forward attacking players on, and then you don't spend the whole time chasing the ball because you can actually control parts of the play. And the other big thing is, see if you say to your team, you're good enough to be a back 4, I believe in you. They get a big lift from that as well. But I don't think he'll do it. I just don't think he'll do it. I think Gareth will almost certainly revert to type, and then he'll have to make a change. And if he does make a change, he needs to make that earlier this time. He needs to think, right, okay, need to have a go at this and be brave and be big and be bold and say, right, okay, we may be 1-0 down or they may be really struggling, but I need to go in the front foot. And I kind of, if he does that, I'll wish them all the best. I'll absolutely wish them all the best, because they've got enough good players, and the likes of Foden are fabulous players. And but if they're trying to do it in that kind of timid way, trying to play the break, they'll probably, and I think, get what they deserve.
And if he goes 5 at the back, who comes out, or where does what part of the field does a player come out?
Well, there's loads of ways to do it. I mean, you could do it as in you've got Kane as on point. You would have one player on point. You could maybe have 2 slightly behind and wider. You could have Foden one side, obviously, and you choose whether it is Saka or whether it is, you could look for the pace. What's the best bit of pace you've got, and attacking and breaking. But that's not a great big deal against the French, because they're absolute lightning in most areas at the back as well. So you might be tempted by Rashford as well. So you'd end up doing a 5, a 2 in front of them, a 2 slightly wider than that, and a 1 up. I think that's what Southgate's done in the past, which then drops into a 5-4-1 when you haven't got the ball, and it could lead to quite a dull game. I think the coaches and the chin strokers would tell you to do that. I think that's what they tell you to do. But you'll notice there are not that many chin strokers in Brazil. They just go and play. They just go and try and win it. They believe in their own abilities and finding the weaknesses in the opposition. And I just get the feeling the French could be capable of doing that. But there are, the French are not perfect. There are weaknesses with the French as well. So, that's why I would say, do you believe you're good enough? If you believe you're good enough, go for it. And if, you lose having a dig, that's fine. I think he would be forgiven for that. Now, I think he would forgive himself for that. Because 20 years down the line, you're sitting being an older man thinking, what should I have done? You never ever regret having a go, but you do regret being timid, certainly in football.
Especially when he's got such talent at his disposal. It's not a...
Talent is growing as well, Joe. Talent is... that is believing in itself. Talent that's been let off the leash in this tournament and has been told, you're good enough, believe you. And then if they suddenly get this wee knockback of, right, okay, then we're going to be a wee bit more defensive now, it kind of might knock that. And you don't need that now. You need to get... You think about the teams that grow into tournaments. They grow into tournaments not by being less positive. They grow into tournaments by believing that much more. And as I say, I always go back to, at the moment, the teams that are winning things in the world stage and in the top leagues are generally positive teams, are generally attack-minded teams. That's the way the game is at the moment.
Matty Cash had some interesting comments about what it's like to mark Mbappe. So he was, and I guess you've been on the other side of this, especially if you knew you had the beating of your man for pace in particular. So he was talking afterwards. He wasn't even that disappointed. He was almost acknowledging there is a gap between Matty Cash and Kylian Mbappe. He said, I didn't know whether to drop off or to go tight. Whenever I went tight to him, he just spun in behind me. And then he described what it's like, you know that, and you've seen it and you've probably done it against certain players. Mbappe can almost do it to anyone. He said, when Mbappe gets the ball, he stops and you know, he stands you up. And then he said, once he moves, he's the quickest thing I've ever seen. And this is what makes Mbappe, I suppose, so devastating. We've seen him so many times stand up a defender and he's in complete control of the situation. And when he goes, he gets a mini head start and you're in big trouble. I mean, we're talking about Messi. It's not something I dare say Mbappe will be able to do when he's 35, but for the foreseeable, it's pretty much an unstoppable weapon in a one-on-one.
And the answer to that, and for time immemorial, against that type of player, I don't know if there's been that many that good, is one in front and one behind. That's it. That's how you do it. It's not complicated. You got one guy who drops off 2 yards and one guy sits in front of him, and that's it. Problem is, of course, that leaves a gap elsewhere.
Yeah.
So, or else he is to move off that line. So that's the simple thing you've done. But because of the sophistication of teams like the French, they will say, okay, you've got two players over there, there's gaps somewhere else, we'll find it. And they generally will. But that is the thing you do if you're against a player who is basically in... It was on the telly I was watching tonight, and I can remember him once, because he played in various positions. I remember watching him, or playing against him once, and he was playing in the left wing. And after a while, I just thought, there's no point. You can do whatever you like. He's better in the air than the player he's playing against. He's quicker, he's got more skill, he can drop, he can go long, he can do everything. And he can do it far better than the player he's playing against. And by the way, the player he's playing against was pretty good at that time. And I remember I was sitting on the bench and I came on quite late. I was dying on early so I could do that one in front, one behind. I wanted to help my fullback. I got on for the last 10 minutes or something like that. The game was dead by then. But I remember thinking, if you leave those players one on one, to be honest, you don't even need to be that good. If you are, I enjoyed in getting a one on one because you didn't often get it. He actually gets it a wee bit more often than you would think, but that's because it's quality players all around the field. So it's as simple as that. Double bank, but preferably one in front, one behind.
Yes.
If you double bank, and if you double up and there's two on, you can still do it. But one in front stops the ball getting through, and the one behind, you just drop off as far as possible. The
line just dropped there at the vital moment where you said the player you were talking about. Who was it?
Right, I hope he's not listening. Stevie Clark.
Okay. And who was the attacking player? We missed that.
Oh, sorry, it was Ruud Gullit.
Ruud Gullit. Okay. Yeah. That such an interesting moment because the line has generally, bar the odd pause, been very good, and we just missed you saying Gullit, and I was wondering who you were talking about for the minute thereafter, and now you say his name, I'm like, oh yeah, I can see how he is better in the air and can do all those things. Yeah, okay. Force of nature.
Absolutely. I mean, you get those players when they're at the peak of their powers. And there are very few of them. That's why I mentioned Gullit. You have to be that special that there is no clear weakness. Although I heard him speaking tonight, he did have a clear weakness. I didn't know this. He hated taking penalties. He couldn't cope. He despised it.
By the way, Messi, that's his one weakness as well, isn't it?
Hated it as well. Didn't like taking penalties. Think of the goals those people could have had if it were bigger penalty kick takers. That would have been incredible. But that's the case. The thing is, you can stop anyone. The problem is you leave a gap elsewhere.
Yes.
It's not complicated when you think about it.
Okay. Well, listen, thank you so much for checking in, and let's talk next week. We'll have a pretty tasty weekend next Monday or Tuesday to reflect on whenever we speak to you. So thanks so much.
Pleasure. Speak soon.
Cheers.
Sorry about the blips.
No. Thanks, Emil. Pat Nevin with us. I think we did well under the circumstances. So Pat with us there from Qatar. And again, if you're just tuning in, Japan 1, Croatia 1 was how it finished earlier on today. And very poor penalties from Japan. Croatia through, and they would play Brazil next weekend. Brazil 4, South Korea 1. And speaking of Brazil, we'll be going to Rio next and talking to Tim Vickery.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky, proud partner and supporter of the Republic of Ireland women's national football team.
This is News Talk. Christmas on News Talk.
My favourite Christmas tradition is that big, long mountain walk with the dogs on St. Stephen's Day.
Putting up the decorations and the Christmas tree. I spend hours on it. I dedicate a whole day to it. I love doing it, and I love taking them down in January too.
On Christmas Eve, we go for a bite to eat as a family, and then we go off to midnight mass. I love that sense of anticipation.
Happy Christmas from everyone in News Talk.
Taking the perfect selfie. Not as easy as it looks. You need the right angle, lighting, maybe a cheeky little filter. But then, that's it. Your GoDating.ie profile pic is good to go. And GoDating will take care of the rest. Two-way matching feature? Check. Add to favourites? Check. Member profile check? Check. GoDating.ie has you covered. Now, how are we getting on with the selfies? Oh yeah, nice. Use that one. GoDating.ie. As loved by News Talk.
Galvin Tullamore, making Christmas special since 1949. Galvin Tullamore.
Hey, I can't wait to see you. It's been so busy here, but we're all set.
Stena Line doesn't just deliver comfort and quality.
Welcome on board. Just let us know if we can get you anything.
Thanks.
We connect you with the people and places you love.
Hi.
So good to see you. Connect with Christmas when you travel with Stena Line. Book your trip to Britain from €149 car and driver one way at stenaline.ie.
If I had one wish this Christmas, I would like to hear my mum's voice again.
For the shouting to stop.
To not feel sad.
To feel safe.
For the hurt to stop.
To be loved.
To not feel so alone. To be heard.
Not every child will have the Christmas they deserve. You can make sure they have someone to turn to. Please donate now to Childline. See ispcc.ie so no child has to feel alone.
Give the gift of getting together this Christmas with the Press Up gift card. One card, unlimited experiences. Date night at Stella Cinema, luxury hotel breaks at the Dean or Glasson Lake House, cocktails at Vintage Cocktail Club, world famous wings at Elephant and Castle. Whether they're a movie buff, luxury hotel lover, or impossible to please foodie, the Press Up gift card opens the door to endless experiences and special memories. Buy online for instant delivery at pressup.ie.
This Christmas, why not gift a memory with a gift voucher for Lyrath Estate, Kilkenny? Make dreams come true by choosing an overnight stay, a spa experience, delightful afternoon tea, dining, or let them choose for themselves with the Lyrath Estate Monetary Voucher. There's something special for everyone. To gift a memory this Christmas, visit lyrath.com.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky, get more of the sports you love on Sports Extra with BT Sport and Premier Sports.
This is News Talk.
Welcome back. So, Brazil very impressive this evening, you would have to say. Certainly in the first half, 4 goals by half-time. Home and hose, they are through to a quarter-final against Croatia next weekend. Very happy to say Tim Vickery is with us. Good evening.
Evening, Joe Molloy. How are you doing?
Very well. Would you think Roy Keane thought that the dancing was good or that the dancing was bad after the Brazilian celebrations?
My starter for 10. He's not happy at all. That's a usual answer, I think, with the gentleman in question, for whom I have enormous respect. But no, I would imagine he's not happy with it.
You are correct. I can't believe what I'm watching. I've never seen so much dancing. It's like watching Strictly. I think it's disrespectful dancing like that every time they score. I don't mind the first jig or whatever it was for the first goal, but not every time. It's disrespectful. Even their manager gets involved. I don't like it.
Well, the manager get involved is this is new, and this is Richarlison. And Richarlison, he's for a while he's had this trademark celebration called the pigeon dance.
I thought it was a chicken. I called it a chicken earlier. There we go.
It's a pigeon. And so what he was doing there, he was running over and he was getting everyone, including the coach, to participate in the pigeon dance to celebrate the fact that Brazil were just doing what pigeons do all over the South Korean defence.
Is that the genesis of the pigeon?
No, that's...
That would be a bold move. That might be disrespectful. He might as well cock a leg at the end of it.
Well, Faustino Splitter did used to do that, but a corner flag to celebrate, like a dog relieving himself on a corner flag. So at least they didn't go that far.
Well, indeed. I have to say, though, I mean, there is something about this team playing with such flair and these 5 attacking players and you know, the Richarlison goal, for instance, I mean, that qualifies as samba football, and the dancing and the celebration. We were trying to think outside, we were just chatting amongst ourselves. This is the most exciting Brazil team, true to their traditional roots in a very long time, no?
I think it is, yeah. And I think a lot of credit has to go to the coach, who's a class act, and he's there's no idea who's going to replace him. He's going to step down after the World Cup. There is no obvious candidate to step in. And they're very, very defensively solid. And that gives them the freedom to do what they did in the first half, where, all right, everything went their way today. They hadn't scored before in the first half of this World Cup. They'd really struggled to break opponents down. This time, first chance is a goal. And then a couple of minutes later, they get a very, very soft penalty. By the standards of the day, it was a penalty, but it's very, very soft. 2-0 up, you know there's no catching them. The game's all over. We only had 10 minutes, and it's all over. So then, you know, let's have a party. Unless the first half is declared null and void, and South Korea go through on virtue of winning the second half, that was a performance of frightening attacking efficiency and frightening defensive efficiency as well in the first half, at least. Second half, they're taking their feet off the pedal. And have you ever seen a knockout game in the World Cup where you decided to give a few minutes to the third choice goalkeeper? I've never ever seen it. It had become an exhibition game, effectively, because it was all over in the first half. I couldn't help feeling a little bit cheated that because of a stoppage time goal against reserves of Portugal, we were watching South Korea against Brazil when we could have been watching Uruguay against Brazil, and we've had a football match.
Yeah. Dave has been in touch. Great to hear Tim's dulcet and insightful tones. Most likeable Brazil team since 2002, reckons Dave. So the people are enjoying what they're seeing, that's for sure. I saw Tiche talking as well, about the Pernas Rapidas, aka the fast little legs. So Rafinha, Vinicius Jr., Gabriel, Martinelli, Rodrigo, this young group that all have a certain something as well, and that's maybe allowing him to encourage this style of football.
Yes, but we saw what happened today when Neymar came back, and it's not only Neymar coming back; it's Lucas Paquetá, because the two of them are kind of it's a package deal. Without Neymar, Paquetá didn't work in that position, and they ended up playing without him, because in order to bring the wingers into the game, in order to bring these fast little legs into the game, you've got to have play through the middle of the field. You've got to have association through the middle of the field. And look at that first goal, because the first goal is key to everything. Because it's the two wingers. It's Rafinha for Vinicius. But it's Paquetá who's slipping Rafinha behind the defensive line. It's no good giving the ball to the wingers on half-time, and on the halfway line, and saying, go and win the game.
Yes.
To get the best out of those wingers, you've got to have association through the middle. And that was Brazil's problem in the absence of Neymar, solved by the return of Neymar and Lucas Paquetá.
Okay, very interesting. And so then, you know, the camera will often cut to Roberto Carlos, or we see Cafu in the stands over the last couple of weeks. In Danilo and Militao, they are more defensively minded. They will accept that, well, if we don't help out Casemiro, no one will.
It's a completely different change of function from the fullbacks. They've had to improvise because they suffered so many injuries. It should be Danilo at right back, Alexander at left back. They've had to improvise. But whoever they put there, it's a new conception. And one of the reasons that Brazil is struggling to form fullbacks, you know, they struggle to call up a second right back, and some of the left backs who've been in contention are certainly not the greatest. It's because with the return of wingers, there's been this change of function. They're not looking for the fullbacks to go bombing up and down the touchline all the time. Yes, when the team is at its best, the fullback, especially Alexander on the left, will appear in the attacking line as an element of surprise. But the slogan from the coach is, I don't want Liverpool fullbacks. I want Man City fullbacks. So their role is to tuck in, make the extra man in midfield. That's why Brazil are so defensively solid, because the fullbacks play this way, and also to construct from deep. So it's a completely different approach to fullback play from the one where Brazil was just producing auxiliary wingers as fullbacks.
Yeah, it's super interesting. It's so funny you said that, because as you were talking, I jotted down Alexander-Arnold, Andy Robertson, because that is they are the defining fullbacks of the age, and so this is really interesting. There does look to be a genuinely remarkable team spirit in this camp, as well. Yeah. That's more than just superficial.
I think it is, yes. And again, credit to the coach. There are a couple of moments that really brought it out. One is when there was the scramble in the penalty area before South Korea had scored, and Alisson made a save, and they managed to clear it away. You could see the defensive unit congratulating each other. They really didn't want to concede a goal. But also, I don't know what the problem was, but Rafinha coming back onto the field at half-time didn't look happy at all. And he was being comforted by some of his teammates. And in the second half, I think there was a concerted attempt to try and give him a goal, which didn't happen because of the goalkeeper. Yes, I do think that there's a good team spirit. Now, that's not that unusual. I remember being at Brazil's FA, this is last year, I think, and talking to someone who works with them, and says their happiness at being together is really striking. Because remember, they're playing all around the European leagues. When they come together, they're with their own people. They can speak their own language. They can sing their own songs. Now, they love that. Now, that might be harder to retain that sense of unity over the period of an entire World Cup in comparison with just, a FIFA date window. And sometimes cracks can appear between those who aren't playing and those who are. But I think that's unlikely in this team. I think that the coach is pretty much on top of that. And they know that they are now 3 games away from immortality. 3 games away from never having to buy a drink again in their lives.
The team unfurled a poster afterwards which simply said Pele and had a picture of Pele from 1970. So there have been any number of very poor reports on how close Pele might be to death, to put it starkly. He's certainly a very ill man. Whether or not he passes during this World Cup remains to be seen. He may well live for many years thereafter. But it's funny, anytime I'd ever contemplated Pele's passing, I just assumed Brazil would come to a complete standstill for however many days or even a week or two. It just had never occurred to me it might happen during a World Cup. It's an extraordinary possibility, and again, hopefully it doesn't happen. But I presume in some respects, there must be a great sadness and it must be talked about a lot. But then obviously the World Cup is kind of the story and the biggest story in town as well. So it's a striking one. It's hard to know what to say about it in some respects.
I'm gonna go for the positive side.
Sure.
The world of football being together at this point in time in Qatar, it means that everyone's together there to send love and respect to Pele, who I think is still sufficiently well to feel that.
Right.
And he loves that. And remember, this is someone who hasn't played for Brazil for over 50 years. So he's someone with whom the current generation of players have grown up with as a kind of reference. But unless they're from the Santos club, like Neymar or Rodrigo, they don't necessarily have a very, very personal connection with him. I think Neymar does, because they both come from Santos. Now, Pele, since he stopped playing, was very effective doing public relations and also guarding his own legacy. And why not? He sweated blood to leave that legacy. So I'm sure he is loving the respect that he's feeling at the moment. So in that sense, it's positive. It's going to happen one day.
Sure.
He's 82. He's got cancer. Whether he is no longer responding to the chemotherapy, that's something that we don't know. It's something that heavyweight Brazilian media are reporting, but we've got no official confirmation of that. The last we've heard, as far as I'm aware, from the hospital in an official capacity was on Saturday, when they said that his condition hadn't worsened in the last 24 hours, and he was responding to treatment. But it neither confirmed nor denied this line in the Brazilian media that he's no longer responding to chemotherapy, in which case it is a matter of time. How much time, we don't know. I know that there's a TV channel that I'm doing a show every day for during the World Cup, and I know that they are on standby footing should the bad news happen.
Yeah.
It may not, it may be a while, but it's going to happen. And I find it positive that the world of football has had a chance to get together and pay tribute.
There's an extraordinary video on Twitter over the last couple of days. I suspect you must have seen it somehow, but I retweeted it.
The first time.
Yeah. So in effect, if anyone hasn't seen it, and I retweeted it, the world has retweeted it, you'll find it on Twitter very easily. Gary Lineker, etc. have all retweeted it. In effect, it's shots of all the iconic things that different modern players have done, be it Cruyff doing the Cruyff turn, or certain things Maradona's done, or some of Zidane's pirouettes, etc., flicks over heads. And the theme of the video is everything you've seen the great players of the world do, Pele did them first. And it's interspersed with Pele doing these exact things. I mean, I did think to myself, well, Cruyff has a cheat calling this the Cruyff turn based on this evidence. This is unbelievable. And it really... it was footage I hadn't seen before. I don't know, had you seen all this before? Because to me, I was seeing things that just I'd never seen.
Yeah, it's ironic that Pele is so associated with the World Cup, but I don't think the World Cup ever saw him at his greatest. And he was fantastic as a skinny kid in '58, and he was fantastic as a wise old owl in '70, but he was at his peak in '62. When he got injured in the second game of the World Cup. My favourite World Cup goal he scores in his career is the one he scores against Mexico in the opening game of that World Cup. If you want the Club World Cup final that year, now that's a new competition. It's only started a couple of years earlier. Champions of Europe and South America, and it's really serious. And it's Santos against Benfica.
Yeah.
And the first leg in Brazil, Santos win 3-2. Benfica consider themselves favourites for the second leg. And Pele just runs amok. Just absolutely runs amok. He puts them 5-0 up. And you're watching a creature from a different species tearing into the European champions and absolutely destroying him. He was so far ahead in so many things. And he was a global icon of football before the game had globalised. He was an absolute machine in physical and technical terms before such things existed, before the level of physical preparation permitted this for the majority. And his brain was just so quick, difficult to play with, you know. I spoke to Toshnal, who was a centre forward with him in 1970, at length on this, and he said, you had to be clever and quick to play with him because his mind is just working so quickly. Recently, Joe, there's been a backlash against him. Nothing to do with his illness. I'm talking in the last 2 or 3 years, there's been a backlash against him. Partly because journalism has never covered this story at its finest in the attempt to create Pele good guy, Maradona bad guy. Mm. Both of them are much more complex individuals than that. You don't get as good as they were at football without having an edge to you.
Yes.
And the younger generation, I think, have reacted badly to the image of Pele as a suit, whereas Maradona is the rebel.
Yeah.
But that has spilled over to football. And I saw recently people, this is something that didn't happen in Brazil, it cottoned on outside. Name your 3 greatest players ever for Brazil. And loads of people did this list without Pele. I think a very famous British TV presenter nothing to do with the sport usually, did his list and didn't have Pele in it. It's bizarre. It's absolutely bizarre. Maybe Pele himself and his supporters have been wrong in stressing so much 1,000 goals. Because it is, in a way, it's a bit of a joke statistic. It's a pumped up statistic. And it doesn't explain the greatness of Pele, because the greatness of Pele is how good he was in the big games, where he was just off the scale in the big games. So there's an opportunity to reevaluate that backlash as well, because it's criminally stupid. He's I see Pele in many ways as like a perfect synthesis of so many things, but also emotionally. The two main motivating sources in life are pride and fear, and he had them both in spades. The pride was from his dad, who was a very good footballer with huge pride in the profession, who on his big break suffered an injury that plunged the family into poverty. The fear comes from his mother's reaction to that. And his mum didn't want him to be. His mum was a very strong character at a time when it was hard for a woman to express that. It was hard for a woman to work. It was hard for a woman to have an independent life. And a lot of that force went into, and he writes about this, his mother's fear of not being able to provide for the kids. And so his mum never wanted him to become a footballer. Never. It was too insecure. Study a little bit, get a steady job in a civil service or something like that. So he had to take on firm maternal resistance to the idea of becoming a footballer. But that fear that he got from her was always in the back of his mind. And it's something that just propelled him. He had to be better. He had to be stronger. He had to be fitter in order to keep the fear away. And he's just a machine of playing football that I don't think has been seen before or since. This just extraordinary machine with everything, and I hope that he's well enough, certainly to enjoy this World Cup, but to have some more quality. You don't want him lingering on just suffering. You want him having quality, enjoying the tributes, enjoying what's happening now, because this habit that the world has every 4 years of coming together, he's the one who did it. He's the one who made the World Cup into this 4-year festival. So I think it's just so fitting that it's happening at this time, that he's in hospital at this time. At least he can see his legacy.
Yes.
And he can feel the love coming in. Because all of us, in any capacity, who make any kind of the most insignificant possible, like ourselves, who make our living from football, we are midgets standing on the shoulder of a giant. And the biggest giant of them all is Pele. And it's tribute to the game as well. You're talking about a poor kid from the wrong side of the tracks, a shoeshine boy. The king of world football. The democratic nature of the game is supremely manifested in the figure of Pele.
Tim, we are out of time. Thank you so much. Pleasure.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Tim Vickery with us live on the line. So Brazil winning comfortably this evening. I'm conscious if you were tuning in midway through that, it could sound like that was an obituary that Pele had passed. He certainly hasn't, but obviously reports of his ill health have been much discussed. So that's what we were chatting about there. Our football coverage is brought to you by Sky. All the football you love in one place across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky, proud partner and supporter of the Republic of Ireland women's national football team.
This is News Talk.
Guaranteed Irish business members continue to sustain jobs and communities across Ireland.
Me Too You is the Irish